going to give this a minute. We are going to wait for X to pick this up, make sure we're live. Everyone needs to be live. And it looks good. All right. Welcome back. This is another Wine Wednesday. I am your host, Jana Kryline, certified wine geek and co-founder of dVIN Labs and Club dVIN. Today, we are joined by a fellow Canadian, Master Sommelier John Szabo, to talk about a very interesting, and I would go so far as to make a really bad joke and say, molten hot topic, which is, wow, I know. It's never good when I try to do that. It's not good. Volcanic wines. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Before we really get into it, we've got Rodolfo here, and those of you who tune in regularly will know when we are graced with Rodolfo's presence, it's a good thing. It usually means there is something very exciting happening. We are releasing another one of our wines. So, Rodolfo, do you care to spill the alpha on this week's upcoming Club dVIN wine drop?
Alpha Spill is my middle name, or my code name.
If you drink wine on these live streams, I would believe more of like the alpha spilling. But
I know, and
spill the beans on everything.
I've just made a commitment to myself to drink wine on these segments. So anyway, pleasure to be with here, both of you, and I look forward to the rest of the conversation offline from me. But just take a minute or two for all of you members and for all of you who should become members. This week we'll be having another wine drop, and it is exciting in part because we don't do a lot of whites, and today we will. It's been a while, but I thought it would be seasonally appropriate, at least for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere. It is warm. It is mid-August. We're going to be featuring Chateau Smith Au Lafitte, which is a favorite for particularly a lot of those in the wine industry. I would say it's perennially one of the front runners in white Bordeaux. So it'll be primarily vastly Sauvignon Blanc from the left bank. That's south of the river. And we have 20. I thought Jana was going to show the bottle, but she's drinking red, of course.
Just pour myself a glass of wine while I enjoy your pitch here.
That's fine. So we have 23 bottle lot, 20, 3 bottle lots, to be clear, and just really excited about the wine. Critical acclaim is fantastic. It's also been called one of the best examples in some time, and one of the white Bordeaux of that vintage. So take advantage if you can of this drop. I highly recommend it. We were able to source it directly, of course. That's kind of what we do. So it will be 15 to 25% or so, I would say, under market price or the average market price. But that all depends, of course, on where you are, and that's why I mentioned a range. It's hard for me to say that relevant to where each one of our members is, as you are a globally distributed bunch. So I don't know if I can say a lot more, but I have a feeling that Jana off camera has one of those like sand timers or whatever they're called, the ones that you turn over, and I can see the last bit of the sand moving out of the top part. So,
thank you very much, Rodolfo. I will get my sand timer out next time. No, that was great, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people who want to know more about the wine drop. I will touch on it again at the end of this episode, but we have a master sommelier with us today. So we are going to dive into the topic and make excellent use of your time, John. Rodolfo, thank you so much. If you want to stick around and discuss all the wines with us, please do.
I would love to. I've got to run, but thank you. And I really look forward to the recording.
Very good. Thanks, Rodolfo.
Thanks, John, for joining us. Bye, Jen.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay. So Always excited about our upcoming wine drops. We like to plug that in. But now our topic is not white Bordeaux. Our topic is volcanic wines. So
Even gravels make good wine. Come on, Jana, you know that.
this is true. This is true. Okay.
Non-volcanic gravels. All right,
True.
sorry.
That's true. It's true. It's true. Okay, John. I we were catching up in the studio before we went live, and I was saying to John, I can't believe I've never met you, and then now we're meeting virtually, because we're both Canadian, both in the wine scene. But I always heard John's name when I was kind of coming up in wine, and so it's so cool that you're joining us. And I did a little bit of research. Is it true? Are you the first Canadian to put those magic MS letters?
It is true, yes. I don't know if I want to admit that anymore, but yeah, 2004.
2004 is like, come on.
A while ago.
That is very cool. That is very, very cool. Okay. And so what got you into wine?
Food.
Part of the
Honestly, I did a degree at U of T in language. I did a double honors in Spanish and Italian language and literature, which is fascinating, but useless unless you want to get into teaching academics, which I didn't really want to. So I thought, well, what else do I like to do? I like to eat, so I should learn how to cook. So I almost went to culinary school, bailed at the last second, and decided to do a more sort of traditional apprenticeship route. So I worked with some pretty great chefs in Southern Ontario, ended up in France and working in some kitchens in Paris and down in the south. And I thought, well, I'm in France and I'm around good food. I want to learn about wine. So I decided to take a little wine course while I was there in Paris. It's a pretty intensive sort of 5-day-a-week, all-day course. So I would go and do my wine thing, and then I would go and work in the restaurant at night, and discovered a whole bunch of great French country wines, we called them back in the day, that didn't exist in Canada. So when I returned, finally, I said, I want to get these into my cellar. So I met an importer who said, well, why don't we make a little partnership? So we did, and I imported wines mainly from France for a little stretch, but that's a nightmare because it's as you know, in our monopoly system, somebody else controls your business, or most of it. So anyhow, I just kept on my studies, did my WCT, eventually the MS, did also first year of the MW program. Actually, I was in the 2 streams at the same time.
Yeah. Okay.
And
didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah, I was en route to becoming an MW, happened to pass the MS first. So I said to myself, well, maybe I should start working now. I'm still looking for a job, by the way, if anyone out there is hiring, and got into writing and teaching and some consulting, and made a pretty interesting sort of career path out of nothing.
Wow. Okay.
That's the short story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it feels like you may have told that short story before, as it might. But it's interesting because I got into wine kind of similarly, and I wonder if this is actually just a lot of people's kind of story. But I studied film in New York, and then ended up working in restaurants. Moved up to Toronto because I thought it would be easier to audition in Toronto than the competition in other places, or where there's no industry at all in other places in Canada probably. And then I started working in restaurants and to support myself, and was doing the wine education by day and working in restaurants at night, and kind of just realized very quickly that wine is actually much, much more of a fulfilling industry than film. So I made that.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to comment on that. Offline, we should talk about our restaurant stories at some point. I'd love to know where you work, but we're not here for that, are we?
No, we're not. I know. And we're like, I'm always like, I'm the timekeeper, and then I ramble. So, okay. All right. You're also a writer though. And I want to make sure that we touch your books. So you have one book on volcanic wines. Is that right?
I do, yes.
And it's out already. Where can we get it?
Oh, that's the tragic tale. Here it is. This is the original version. Looks backward there, but it was published in 2016 and quickly sold out. And then my publisher retired. So it's been out of print now for several years. You can still find it on Amazon, but usually at these ludicrous prices. People, selling used copies for hundreds of euros. However, the good news is that I'm finally getting around to turning it into a digital version. And in fact, my partner is putting the final touches on it this week. So check back again on Amazon or Apple Books or wherever you get your books. And it'll be in the e-version, the original, with some new chapters that I'm going to add on. I'll be announcing that on my Instagram account at John Szabo MS. If you want to get the latest on I'm not going to call it a drop because you have your drops. I'm just putting a book out there that people seem to be interested in.
Listen, did you know that we worked with Jane Anson to release her Inside Bordeaux NFT ebook? You should try that.
Yes, another thing to talk about offline.
Another thing to talk about.
Jane,
Anyway,
she's great.
okay, this isn't like a meeting. This is actually a live stream. So we will talk about that offline. Okay, and you also have a pairing book, right? Pairing food and wine for dummies.
Yes, the Yellow Jacket series that's been around forever, pairing food and wine for dummies. That was a challenge to write, I have to say. That was about a dozen years or so ago. Because what do you say really about food and wine pairing? They've got a very formulaic way of putting these books together. So I had to do 333 pages. Okay. Pairing food and wine you could summarize in a page or two, or you could turn it into a 1,000-page scientific discourse, neither of which I wanted to do. So I don't know. I filled the pages somehow. It's actually got some useful information in it.
Okay. I mean, so again, before we went live, we were just, John and Rodolfo and I were talking about what's in everyone's glasses, and John is sipping a glass of wine, but I'm going to give you away now. He's also got his breakfast smoothie there. So I doubt that the breakfast smoothie is paired in the book with a wine.
It's just a prop. It's before noon here in Toronto, so taking it easy.
It's 5:45 for me, so I am already actually, I think you guys saw I topped up my glass already. But what is in your glass? I assume it's volcanic.
Well, it's something volcanic, naturally. I just happened to open this the other night, coincidentally. This is from Suertes del Marqués. It's a Listan Negro from the Canary Islands, from Tenerife, to be precise, which was one of the regions I visited on the grand tour. Actually, the first volcanic region I visited when I was researching the book. Sometime back in 2014, it must have been, and an absolutely fascinating archipelago. If you haven't been to the Canaries, highly recommend it. Everyone, looks at shots of Lanzarote, one of the other islands, and it's just the most remarkable wine landscape I've seen anywhere on the planet. It's wild. Look it up. Lanzarote winelands, vineyards.
Interesting. I really want to get to the Azores, but that's also on my list. So. And again, I ramble. So, okay, I've got a Nerello Mascalese in my glass. So from Etna, I'm
just looking at which Contrada that is. What's the little bit at the bottom? Moganazzi. Oh, nice. See, you don't waste any time, Jana. You just go straight to the good stuff.
You know what? I actually thought I was looking for this wine. I don't know if you saw my Instagram story today, but I was like, oh my God, did I drink the wine that I bought for this stream? And I couldn't find it. And then I found it in my fridge. And anyway, the drama, but it's delicious. And it's interesting. So the winemaker is Marco Di Grazia. Do you know him?
I do, yes. Okay. I've been to the estate a couple of times.
Okay, I figured. I have not met him, and it's the first wine that I taste from his estate. But he refers to Etna as the Burgundy of the Mediterranean, which I found pretty cool. What do you think of that?
I think everyone wants to compare themselves to Burgundy. It's not a bad place to be compared to, but there's some justification. In the case of Etna, it's a big volcano, as I'm sure you know, divided into, can't remember now how many different contrade, which are more or less like communes. It's a very uniquely Italian thing to geopolitically divide your cities and countryside into contrada, but there are many, many of them, and the conditions on the south side and the east side and the west side and different elevations make for pretty dramatically different wines. And it's all volcanic, obviously, but some of that soil is weeks old, if you can even call it soil. I mean, it's erupting every other week, it seems. And some of it's, hundreds of years, thousands of years, tens of thousands of years. So pretty radically diverse place within the world of volcanic wines, and some terrific results. Huge fan of Etna. Actually, one of the wines that set me on the path to my research into volcanic wines.
Really?
Yes.
So do you mean Etna in general, like just wines of Etna, or
just wines of Etna? Well, I'll tell you the story. So it's, probably 15 or 16 years ago now, I was writing for a magazine called Wine Access. I don't know if you remember that in Canada. It was one of the bigger publications.
Sure. And
my editor at the time asked a few of the contributors for their year-end sort of favorite wine type of piece. So I was there trying to be clever, and I couldn't say champagne because everyone says champagne, and same thing with Burgundy or Barolo. So I started thinking, all right, what have I tasted in the past year that really kind of intrigued me? And I visited Etna that year, and also Santorini. And my background is Hungarian. I go to Hungary all the time. I've been to the north shores of Lake Balaton, beautiful volcanic landscape there. Yeah. And I'm sitting there at my desk thinking, well, I mean, what links all of these things together? There's nothing. Wait a sec. These are all volcanic regions. Just sort of dawned on me out of the blue. So I thought, okay, I'm going to be clever. And my little tongue-in-cheek paragraph was, my favorite wine grows on a volcano. And I gave a couple of examples, like Etna.
No way.
So I sent that in to the editor. Shelley is her name. Still writes about wine in Calgary. And she said, volcanic wine? Huh. How interesting. Can you maybe write a full-length article on that? And I said, I don't know. Let me look into it. So I did, and I discovered that, my goodness, there's a whole massive range of really interesting, fascinating, indigenous varieties, singular, unique, characterful wines. So I wrote that article, and then as I was researching that, I thought to myself, oh, there's maybe a book here.
So is your specialty primarily now volcanic wines, or, I mean, you're a master som, so
well, no.
Any higher than that.
That's the thing. You know, you write a book on one particular subject, and you're forever associated with that. And certainly that's the case with me in volcanic wines, or Liz Gabay in rosé. You know, she's the rosé queen because she wrote a book on it. But no, my day job with Wine Align. So I'm one of the principal critics at winealign.com, based in Canada. But we cover the world, and we try and review everything that comes into Canada, or as many wines as we can. So I cover the world with, I would say, a subspecialty on volcanic wines. I run this conference now in New York. We started in 2018, and we ran it annually, little hiatus during the pandemic, and we're back next year in 2026 with the 5th edition. So yeah, a lot of my interest is there, but you know, I have time for limestone, I have time for granite, I have time for even the gravels of Bordeaux. You know, I can drink those wines too.
Can you?
I can.
Can you really? If I twisted your arm, would you drink a good Burgundy or a good Bordeaux?
I just wish you could ship that 3-bottle case to Canada, but I know you can't. It'll never arrive.
We have a lot of members in Canada.
Really?
We should talk. Is this the conference that you're talking about? Is that the co-founder? So you're the co-founder of the Volcanic Wines International.
That's right. Yes.
And it's a conference. Or?
It's a conference, grand tasting, and it's also evolved to include an awards competition that we started last year in partnership with Wine and Spirits magazine in the US, who sadly closed their doors last year. So this year, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, because I'm going to say it anyhow. We're partnering with Jancis Robinson, her publication, and yeah, we're going to blow it up. It's going to be a massive celebration of volcanic wines from all over the world, tasted by experts and awarded.
That's awesome. Okay, looking forward to that. And then one more thing before I'm going to start to grill you on volcanic wines in a minute, because I feel like, you know, we need to get there. But do you have a vineyard in Prince Edward County?
Thanks for reminding me. Yes, I do.
we didn't have like an alignment before this. So.
Yes, I planted in 20. Well, I had a vineyard in Hungary for 20 years in Eger. I grew a variety called Kék Frankos, which some other people call Blaufränkisch, but let's be honest, it's a Hungarian grape. Kék Frankos, we'll call it. But
are you listening, Austria?
They've stolen it from the Hungarians. What have the Austrians ever done for us other than, never mind. Yeah, so I planted in 2022, pretty radical project of a field blend of all white varieties that are struggling away in the drought of 2025. Hopefully they survive. I was out there watering them the other day, but it's tough. It's much easier to buy and drink the stuff than to grow it. I can tell you that.
Ooh, well, it still sounds like a really exciting project. Prince Edward County fascinates me. I know Prince Edward Island a little better. I'm from the East Coast, but no wines there. But okay.
Great potatoes.
Great potatoes. True. Okay, so we kind of touched on like what drew you into volcanic wines. Was there like an aha bottle, or?
Well, yes. Actually 2 aha bottles. One, first time I ever went to a Greek wine tasting. There was one being held here in Toronto. I knew almost nothing about Greek wine, Retsina, and you know, a couple of holiday memories, but that was about it. Mm-hmm. And this agent calls me up, says, "Come and taste some wine." So, why not? I went to the event. I was on the 2nd floor, walked up the stairs, stopped at the first table, which happened to be Jana Estate from Santorini. Mm-hmm. Tasted their first wine. It was called Thalasitis, still being made today. And I literally almost fell back down the stairs. I said, "What is this? I'd never tasted anything like it. It was so salty. It was so stony. It was so intense. I mean, I was kind of trembling. It's exciting when you taste something that you had no idea existed, and it's delicious in its own unique way. So that was one bottle. And the second bottle was, funnily, you're drinking one from that same estate. It was Terrenere, just basic Etna Rosso. I was doing the wine program for a group of restaurants called Terroni here in Toronto, great Italian restaurant. Anyhow, agent shows up with a bottle of wine. He said, this just arrived, this sample. I've never tasted it. Let's taste it together. I know nothing about it. I said, I don't really know anything about it. Let's give it a go. Pulled the cork, poured it in the glass, and similar reaction. I said, what the hell is this? This is unbelievable. So perfumed, so smoky, stony. I mean, I just loved it straight out of the gate, and I bought everything that they had brought in, 20 or 25 cases. It wasn't a lot, but yeah, those two wines kind of piqued my interest, I guess you could say.
Okay. I love stories like that. It's especially when you're talking to a master som. Those aha bottles, like it's a really good tip for people to go out and discover, and everyone's going to have their own association. It's like, if you have never tasted something like that, maybe someone else has, but it's always a very personal experience. I'm going to have to track down that Greek wine. Sounds very promising.
And I still love both of those estates, and I still love both of those regions.
Yeah.
Maybe even more.
Okay. First time I went to Etna, I was flying in, it was a few years ago, and I was going to visit the Donna Fogata estate. And as I was landing, the pilot came on and said, now out the left window, you'll see Etna, and it just erupted. So it was really cool. I mean, it erupts all the time. But if, you're like, what? It just erupted. If you don't really know if it's an active volcano, but if you don't really understand, it doesn't have to be that dramatic. I also learned that Etna is a female volcano. Do you know the difference between a male and a female volcano, John?
Well, I mean, you'd have to ask the locals. Like the main volcano in the Canaries is called El Teide, so it's a masculine volcano, and A Montaña or La Montaña is what they call Etna, the mountain, Monte Ghibellina in Arabic. But I don't know if we should slip off topic into male and female volcanoes at this point.
Well, we don't have to, but it was something that I learned, and it's a little bit awkward, but they told me that it's actually how the volcano erupts. And I was listening to a podcast a while ago about Etna, and somebody said something about how, it erupts all the time, and it's like it's so scary and what a threat and everything. But the people that I met around Etna always said, well, it's a female volcano. So when it erupts, this is, again, awkward territory, but whatever, we're doing it. Apparently it's like by the time the lava actually reaches down to like where people are living and working, and it takes a really long time. So
it's a tall mountain. It's 3,300 meters. So, lava flows pretty slowly.
Yeah.
All right. So you can go male and female. I'm going to go a little more scientific and call it effusive and explosive. So Etna is an effusive volcano. They also call it Strombolian or Hawaiian. Just think of those curtains of lava that kind of spurt out gently. It's a little fountain of lava. It's not a massive explosive one. I mean, I guess the poster volcano for that might be Vesuvius, and that massive eruption of 79 AD, or in the more recent time frame, Mount St. Helens in Washington. You probably don't remember that, but that was 1982. Massive eruption. That's when you get the big, tall cloud of ash that can rise tens of kilometers into the sky, and then eventually collapse on itself and causes mass destruction. Those are the dangerous ones. I guess you're going to call those the male volcanoes, and the female ones are gentle, little spurt of lava from time to time.
It's just what the people of Etna told me. Okay, John, that's not like. Don't nail me
All right,
down.
you went there.
I did. Okay, so let's get into what's in the glass. So for someone who's new to volcanic wines, how would you describe that you kind of unique, let's say, volcanic fingerprint in the glass? If you were tasting something, one glass is volcanic, one glass isn't.
Great question. And I look at things pretty simply, or at least start out in a very simple way. And in the world of wine, you could cleave it into two major hemispheres. On the one side, you've got fruity wines. On the other side, you have more savory wines.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously there's overlap. Wine is made from fruit, so you're always going to have a bit of fruit, and there's always other things going on. But by and large, I've found over now 15, 18 years of tasting plenty of volcanic wines and others that the volcanic wines fall on the savory side.
Yeah.
Compared to the more fruity side. So, I mean, quite honestly, if you were just starting into wine and you wanted to have your first glass, I probably wouldn't give you a classic volcanic wine because they can be pretty jarring. They're not easy, they're not soft, they're not cuddly, they're not fruity, they're a little edgy, they're very savory, they're very salty. I mean, the subtitle of my book is Salt, Grit, and Power, and they are gritty. I mean, you probably got a little grit there from your Nerello in the glass. So gritty, salty, edgy. They always have this real sense of tension and vibrancy and freshness. But, fascinating. The more you drink wine, the more you look for these kind of unique flavor profiles, I find. And they're super friendly at the table because, it's that little pinch of salt. It's that little squeeze of lemon. Acid and salt are great flavor enhancers. And volcanic wines tend to have those qualities in spades.
100%. Yeah. And I think one of the things that I found interesting in learning about from books, podcasts, when I was doing my wine education, whenever I was reading about volcanic wines, it always kind of came to the surface that even in really hot areas, somehow the volcanic wines are just like lighter on their feet. There's something about the acidity. Is that because of the soil? Do you find that that's a true statement?
Yes, I do. And again, I know we're not going to get super technical here, but volcanic soils, at least the best ones for grape growing, for quality wine, are not the most friendly environment for the roots of a vine to live in. I mean, I describe it as, volcanic soils are super rich in minerals, which in certain climates means very, very fertile. Think of the best coffee beans in the world. They grow on volcanic soils and very rich, fertile volcanic soils, great for crops, not so great for grapes that you want to turn into great wine. For those, you need more, how shall I say, difficult volcanic soils that are rockier. They hold a little bit less water. They might have a broad range of nutrients, but those aren't really available to the vine because there's no water there to dissolve the mineral ions to get into the plant itself. So the vine struggles a little bit. Sugar accumulates a little bit more slowly, so alcohol levels tend to be a little bit lower, and pH, acidity tend to be higher, or there's always this impression of freshness. Even when, technically, analytically, the acids aren't that high, they still seem fresh and quite vibrant. So, I mean, I could give you plenty of examples of delicious wines at 11.5%, 12% red and white or rosé that come from pretty warm areas.
Yeah. I actually, when I'm sipping on this and thinking about the winemaker saying, this is like or he thinks that the Etna wines are kind of a Burgundy comparison. I actually go more to Barolo, but it's got that acidity. It's got power and tension and it's got grit, but yeah, I just, maybe it's because I'm in Italy. I don't know.
Well, the other piece to that story that I think is an important one, and one that I did not anticipate when I embarked on my world volcanic tour, is just how many indigenous varieties I came across. Varieties that have been in the same place for hundreds, if not thousands of years, like your Nerello Mascalese, like Piedirosso and the Campi Flegrei, like Asirtico and Santorini, and I could go on. Why did these grapes persist, survive for centuries in this area? It's because they produced naturally balanced wine. And not only that, but wine that would survive at least until the next harvest, because that was really the goal of a 14th century wine grower, was to make something that wouldn't turn to vinegar before the next harvest, so they'd have something to drink year long. And they didn't have any chemistry knowledge. They couldn't adjust the acidity. They couldn't really do anything. So the grape, if it produced balanced wine, would have survived in the region. If it didn't, then it would have been discarded. I'm sure if you planted Chardonnay, for example, on Santorini, it would be a disaster. Probably the alcohol would shoot through the roof. The acidity would be, in a dangerous zone, and you'd have to adjust and you'd have to manipulate. But in these volcanic regions, a grape that maintained its acidity, didn't get too alcoholic, would have lasted. And I mean, so many examples I could give you of
Yeah, and
perfectly balanced wines.
there's no, I mean, phylloxera certainly doesn't thrive in many volcanic areas either, right? So I think it's interesting for the preservation of indigenous grape varieties.
Yes, for sure. That's another important point there.
Yeah.
Like on Etna, like on Santorini, there's no phylloxera.
Yeah. So these vines, I know this is an old vine wine. They're 70 to 90 years old. So there's lots of concentration. It's just, yeah. I gotta say, I have had. You can see how much is left in the bottle. It's beautiful. This is a wine I would definitely recommend. Okay, so blind tasting, we've kind of covered subtle cues you might look for. Is the wine maybe more savory? The acidity characteristic, saltiness. How would you compare it when you say savory? I immediately always think of like Hermitage. I always think of Northern Rhone, and I think of those like red wines that have this like white pepper and almost like bacony aromas. How would you compare it to something like that?
Well, okay, back up a step here and say, okay, we're talking volcanic wines as though it's, one type of wine, one category. The truth of the matter is it's a huge category. And it took a while to convince a publishing house to actually buy into my idea. I said, oh, that's very niche, said my English publisher. I said, well, wait a sec. No, a book on Champagne is niche. That's, one region, a couple of grape varieties. A book on Burgundy is pretty niche. It's 2 grapes in one tiny little part of land. Volcanic wine covers literally hundreds of grape varieties, every climate category known to climatologists, and even the category of volcanic soils is massive. I mean, as we just discussed, you've got the ash from yesterday on Etna versus the 300 million year old soils in the Nahe in Germany, for example, or slivers of the Mosel. And then the chemical composition of these soils differs quite dramatically as well. From, on the one side, basalts, which are super rich. I have a little rock collection in my backyard from volcanic. I know you're going to not be able to see that, but it's kind of reddish color. That's from high iron content that has oxidized. It has rusted, essentially gives it that red color, iron and magnesium. So basalts on the one hand, super high in iron and magnesium, and rhyolites these are the explosive ones, the more male, I guess, volcanic rocks, you'd call them, that are very silica rich. All right, so even we're talking about different chemical milieux, different range of nutrients available. So volcanic wine isn't just one type of wine. So we'd almost have to go region by region and do a little comparison like you're asking me to do. And we could start off, well, we were in Italy, so let's stay there. How about Soave? Northern Italy, Veneto, fantastic region. I'm a huge fan of the Garganega grape, the main white grape that grows there.
Or northeast,
Northeast, just north of Venice, near the town of Soave. And there's a beautiful geological fault that runs right through the appellation. On the one side, you've got stark white limestone soils. I mean, bright white, shiny. And on the other side of that fault, you've got deep black basalt soils. And it's really like side by side. There's a little road you can take where you actually cross the fault line. And here you see black, and 10 yards away, you see white. Vines growing on the same soil, same producer, same climate, same vintage, same everything. To do this side by side there gives you a real sense of the difference. So what is that difference? Basalt Soave Classico tends to be a little deeper in color, a little riper in fruit. Think of the heat retention of those darker soils, giving that back to the fruit. They get quite ripe. They get almost tropical with a real diesel-y sort of note, whereas the limestone ones, acidity tends to be measurably a little bit higher and more citrus, more green apple, lighter, sharper, delicious wines as well. I mean, they're both delicious, but they're different.
Oh, that's a really good comparison. Yeah, Soave is an interesting place to look because of that fault. I should have been asking you questions about Soave from the beginning, John. That's a really good example. Okay.
Another one? Do you want another one?
Go for it.
How about the Willamette Valley in Oregon?
Okay.
And here's another great place because the principal grape variety is Pinot Noir. And as you know, anyone who makes Pinot Noir is obsessed with terroir and nuance and difference and try and let the land speak as much as possible. So you take appellations like the Yola Amity Hills and you compare them to Ribbon Ridge, just to give you two examples. There are many others where you've got these now pretty weathered old basalt soils throughout the Columbia Basin. And you've got sedimentary soils that have been deposited and accreted by the seaside. Two totally different environments for Pinot Noir to grow in. And you taste them side by side. The sedimentary soil Pinot is always deeper in color and it's more tannic. Here, I'm almost going against what I said earlier about my salt and grit and power, but those sedimentary soils actually dry out earlier in the season. So there, the vine struggles to push the fruit past into the fully ripe zone. The tannins remain a little bit more edgy, whereas in the case of these nicely weathered basalts in certain appellations, it's a nice place for actually vines to grow in, and you get this more red-hued color, this lovely, spicy, more red fruit side to Pinot Noir, silkier palate, silkier tannins, really, really quite distinctively different. And again, both delicious, just different.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, when you're now, because now we're in the USA, a lot of people probably don't think of Napa as well as being a place where there's a lot of volcanic soils. Or you touched on Germany. I mean, I was going through, or Austria. Like I was just going through my wine fridge looking for this wine. Again, the dramatic Instagram story today. And I was looking through and I have all these wines with like volcanic names. And I was just thinking like, I know these wines and I know these wineries so well. And, not often do people really talk about the volcanic side of them. So for example, like in Styria, I've got some wines, I think from Christoph Neumeister, that have like Vulcan in the name.
Vulcanland. Yeah, I was very angry with the Austrians. They changed it. It used to be Eastern Styria or something like that. While I was writing my book, and I didn't even know there was much volcanic soil there. And then, a year later, they came, we've changed the name. We're going to call it Vulcanland, Steiermark. Right. I said, no. Now you tell me.
Yep. And then also Odenstall, for example, they have like a
awesome wines.
Amazing
awesome wines.
I know. I love Odenstall. They're VDP now since a couple of years, right? Anyway.
I visited the spent volcano at the top of the estate there. But yes, you see, there are so many different volcanic regions that we don't even think about. I mean, the obvious ones that are, active volcanoes like Etna, but the Azores, also super active area, and Madeira is a volcanic island. I mean, the whole stretch there. Southern France, Auvergne in the heart of France, parts of Catalonia in Spain, Italy from north to south, Greece has plenty of volcanic soils. Armenia, maybe one of the most interesting countries I visited subsequent to publishing the book, but extremely volcanic up in the Vayat Zor. It's just Armenian highlands at 800,000 meters above sea level. Phenomenal wines, and also a great variety called Areni that has been growing there for 6,000 plus years. This we know because the oldest known winery in the world is in a cave in the highlands of Armenia, where they found the same DNA, the seeds of this variety that still grows wild outside the cave and is now the principal red grape of the country.
Okay. So you have obviously traveled a lot throughout the world of wine. But I do know there's one place, and it has nothing to do with volcanoes that I know of. Bhutan. There is a wine region that you have not yet been to. John Szabo, Master Sommelier.
It's true.
And it is Bhutan. So, and we took Jancis Robinson there last year. So next time you're talking to her, ask her about her experience in Bhutan. That's why I've got these like masks behind me as well.
Okay, I was wondering.
Yeah. So the Bhutan Wine Company is this amazing project, and we're going off on like a little thing, but you have to check it out. The Bhutan Wine Company just started a new wine industry. It's like the last frontier of wine in the Himalayas. And it's really cool. It's kind of a science experiment right now, but we were there. I have the masks because I participated in the first harvest and then the first commercial harvest. So this is like a close to the heart project. And we're taking a bunch of people there in September this year. Again, but
sign me up. Maybe not this year, but next year.
Let's talk about it. You should definitely come and check it out. It'd be great to have you there. But anyways, not volcanic. So again, a Jana ramble. I have one last question for you before we wrap it up. If you had to pair a volcanic wine with something totally unexpected, like something very Canadian, like poutine, how would you make it work?
Poutine. All right. For those of you who don't know what poutine is, great I'm not going to call it a national dish. It's more of a Quebecois dish, but you find it all over the country now with 1,000,001 variations. But it's essentially French fries and gravy and cheese curds. That's
a very special cheese curd that is
it's got to be the squeaky. I mean, when you bite into it, it's beautifully squeaky. So it's salty, it's crunchy, and I mean, you know, you're singing my song here. This is the classic volcanic wine description: salty and crunchy. I drink white with my poutine, I have to say, and I think you're more of a red wine drinker, but
both.
You're both. You're an equal opportunist. I love it. Why don't we do? All right. Let's get exotic here. How about a little falangina from the Campi Flegrei?
Okay.
So we're in Campania in southern Italy, just outside of Naples. In fact, the Campi Flegrei is a beautifully volcanic, actually frighteningly volcanic region. It's actually a super volcano, only one of two in Europe. The other one is Santorini. But this area outside of Naples called Pozzuoli has actually been pushed up by the pressure of the earth, all that magma underneath and pressure and gases, something like 2 meters since the 1980s. What? Which might not sound like a lot, but in geological terms, in 40 years, for the land to raise 2 meters, I mean, there are parts that used to be undersea that are now raised and others that have sunk down. And it's just a wild, wild place. Ultra volcanic. How do you build? I mean, very earthquake prone because, I mean, there were 600 earthquakes in a 2-week period earlier this year. I've been there many times, but I've never actually experienced an earthquake, which is okay. I mean, be careful what you wish for. Anyhow, so falangina, it's actually a very specific biotype of falangina that gives you these high acid, low alcohol, salty, crunchy white wines that you want to sit out on the terrace overlooking the Bay of Naples and having a bowl of poutine. You're not in Naples.
Good luck getting the cheese curds over there. Yes, I want that experience. Sign me up for that.
Yeah, we could have gone 1,001 directions. I don't know why I ended up there,
that's
but
a good one.
Crunchy, salty white wine, refreshing.
Salt, Grit, Power, the book.
Salt, Grit, and Power.
Salt, Grit, and Power.
Okay, I gotta accept the order.
I will pay whatever the Amazon price is. Okay, I know you said it's.
I'll send you the ebook as soon as it's out. As I said, any day now. I've been waiting. It's a long process. If you got any tips on producing an ebook, let me know.
Yeah, we do. Let's chat about that offline. John, thank you so much for joining us. It's always such a pleasure to have a Master Somm on the show. We really, really appreciate your time and expertise. And for anyone who is interested in the wine drop that we talked about earlier, head on over to clubdvin.com. If you are not yet a member, our application process is open. And if you are a member, then you know what to do. Just stay tuned for Rodolfo's email and you're going to get a link on Thursday. And yeah, thanks again, everyone. I hope you're thirsty for volcanic wines. There are obviously a lot of options. I am going to put a cork in this because I actually have to go and swim some laps and I don't feel like drowning today. So, okay. Thanks, John. Enjoy the rest of your stay.
Very pleasure to chat with you.
Thanks, guys. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We'll catch you next Wednesday with Garth Hodgdon. We are doing a champagne special. Cheers, guys.